In the 6th year of their marriage, Brenda's husband Adolf developed feelings for the new young maid in their household. The young maid had just arrived in the city, lively, adorable, still childlike, and naively innocent. Adolf personally decorated a new room for her. Pink curtains, a pink princess bed, pink bunny slippers. Everything was dreamily perfect. He seemed to have forgotten how he had once endured 99 lashes from Brenda's father just to marry Brenda, nearly losing his life in the process. I can't recall exactly when it started, but from their first year of marriage, he would personally go to Tibet every year to climb the sacred mountain, prostrating himself with each step. It took 81 days of devotion to obtain a single protective talisman. 3 months ago, he had just personally hung the 6th talisman around her neck. Back then, his heart and eyes were completely filled with her, as he tenderly said, "May all the deities bless my Brenda with peace, joy, health and freedom from worry every year." But now, he holds the undergarments that the maid Dana changed out of last night, bringing them to his nose and inhaling greedily. He said there was the scent of a young girl on it. Brenda wasn't she once a young girl when she was with him? From 18 to 24, from maiden to young wife, she broke her parents' hearts for him. Yet in the end, he fell in love with another young girl. Brenda didn't cry. She simply took the protective amulet hanging around her neck, lit it on fire, and washed all the ashes down the toilet. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. She still has 5 more of these protective talismans. When all the protective talismans are burned up, it will be time for her to leave Adolf. Upon arriving home, the moment she stepped inside, she heard the bell-like laughter of the little maid Dana. "Sir, this is Madam's favorite necklace. Can you really give it to me?" Adolf responded ambiguously with an The color scheme of this necklace is very fresh. It suits you even more. Dana couldn't contain her joy. "Then thank you. Sir, come here. Let me help you put it on." Dana obediently turned her back. Adolf stood right behind her, ostensibly helping her with the necklace. But from Brenda's perspective, he was burying his face in the crook of her neck, greedily inhaling her scent. "Why do you smell like milk?" Adolf murmured while nuzzling and kissing her neck. "It's like a baby's scent." Dana giggled. "Maybe it's because I still have baby fat. Hee hee. Sir, please stop. It tickles. Be good. Don't move." Brenda's return seemed to interrupt their intimate moment. Dana startled like a frightened rabbit and jumped out of Adolf's arms, lowering her head to greet. "Madam is back." Brenda immediately noticed the pearl necklace around her neck, the only keepsake left by her mother. Brenda instantly changed her expression. "Who told you to wear this? Take it off." Dana was so frightened she burst into tears and immediately reached to remove it. "I'm sorry, madam. I didn't steal it. It was the master who. I was the one who put it on Dana." Adolf pressed down Dana's hand that was removing the necklace and said gently, "Since it was given to you, there's no reason to take it back." Brenda felt her blood boil. "Adolf, do you know this necklace is?" "I know, but after all, it's just a necklace. Not worth much. If you want one, I'll take you to buy a more expensive one tomorrow." "I don't want any other. I just want this one." Adolf turned cold. "Brenda, I've already given this necklace to Dana. Don't embarrass me." "Oh no." Dana let out a cry as the pearl necklace snapped, scattering pearls all over the floor. Brenda could no longer spare the effort to argue with Adolf and knelt on the ground, picking up the beads one by one. Dana shrank behind Adolf, clutching his hand tightly. "Sir, it's all my fault. I was so clumsy and broke Madam's necklace. Please dismiss me. It's because of me that Madam is so heartbroken. I deserve this punishment." Dana sobbed uncontrollably, while Adolf comforted her gently. "I won't let you go. Go back and rest first. I'll think of a way." Dana left. Adolf crouched down, watching Brenda crawl on the floor searching for pearls. Crying anxiously, he said, "Brenda, you should go back and rest too. I'll help you look." Brenda was unsuspectingly led upstairs by him, but the moment she turned around, she was pushed from behind. She tumbled down the stairs and finally collapsed in a pool of blood. A warm, sticky liquid gushed out from beneath her, blossoming into a crimson lotus beneath her body. My baby. My baby. She was pregnant, barely over a month along. Adolf knew it. In the last second before losing consciousness, Adolf's black leather shoes appeared in her field of vision. He crouched down, gently stroking Brenda's hair and whispered, "Brenda, there will be more children in the future. Dana is insisting on leaving. Only if something happens to you will Dana stay to take care of you. Brenda woke up in the hospital. As soon as she opened her eyes, she saw Dana lying by her bedside, while Adolf took off his own coat and gently draped it over her. "You're awake," Adolf said. "Don't speak. Don't disturb Dana's sleep." Brenda asked coldly. "What about the pearls? How many have you recovered?" Adolf immediately frowned in displeasure. "Or perhaps you didn't even bother to look." Dana gradually woke up, saw her, and cried with joy, immediately throwing herself into an embrace. "Whoa, madam, you're finally awake. You've always been so kind to me. I must stay and take care of you until you're fully recovered," Adolf said with deep concern. "You've been keeping vigil here all night. Are you hungry? What would you like to eat? I'll go buy it for you," Dana replied. "I'd like to eat." "Never mind. It's not the right time for that now. There's nothing inappropriate about it. Just name it, and I'll make sure you get to eat it." "Sir, can I really have anything I want to eat?" "Of course. I want to eat the cookies baked by Madam herself. I had them once before, and I've never tasted anything so delicious. But Madam hasn't baked them since then. I want to ask for them, but I don't dare to speak up." Adolf looked at Brenda. Brenda sneered. "What do you mean by that?" Adolf said. "It's just baking some cookies. Not hard at all. Dana wants to eat them, so I'll make them for her." "Adolf, I just had a miscarriage." "Yes, I know," Adolf said. "I'll take you back to the hospital after we finish the cookies." Brenda stared at him coldly, as if staring at a monster. Adolf remained silent for a moment, then walked over, slightly leaning down to whisper in her ear, in a voice only the two of them could hear. "Brenda, just help me this once. Otherwise, I'll throw all those pearls into the sea, leaving you not a single one to find." "Adolf, are you threatening me?" Adolf instantly switched to a smile and said to Dana, "Let's go." Brenda has agreed. "We'll go home and make you some cookies." On the way back, Dana said she had low blood sugar and felt dizzy. Adolf hurriedly carried her toward the parking lot, turning back to urge Brenda. "Brenda, hurry up. Dana has low blood sugar." Brenda felt utterly weak, struggling to lean against the wall as she took one step at a time. Even the nurse couldn't bear to watch and came over to support her. "Miss Brenda, you have 3 broken ribs and just had a miscarriage. How can you be out of bed?" It turned out she hadn't just had a miscarriage. She had also broken 3 ribs. No wonder the pain was so excruciating. Even walking felt like it was draining all her strength. "Brenda, are you dragging your feet on purpose?" Adolf scolded angrily. "Or do you not want those pearls anymore?" Brenda smiled, laughing through tears. This was the man she had risked everything to marry. "You want it," she said. "Then hurry up and follow." On the way home, Dana sat in the passenger seat, while Brenda sat in the back. In the past, Adolf had even specially printed a sign to place on the passenger seat, which read, "Brenda's exclusive spot." But now, the sign had long since disappeared. The passenger seat was also covered with pink lace cushions, arranged exactly how Dana liked it. When they got home, Adolf held Dana on the sofa while Brenda forced herself to stay busy in front of the oven. By the time the cookies were ready, she could no longer hold on and weakly slid down, collapsing onto the floor. "Adolf, save me." Adolf walked over and then stepped directly over her, grabbed a few cookies and stepped back over her again. Finally, sat down beside Dana. "Try it quickly. Is it the same taste as before?" Dana ate happily. "As expected. Your cooking is still the most delicious. Glad you like it. As long as you keep working from home, I can have Brenda make it for you often." Dana snuggled into Adolf's arms and cooed. "Sir, you and your wife are both so kind to me. I'll definitely repay you properly." Adolf held her contentedly, his arms tightly encircling her waist, pressing their bodies close together. "Are these cookies really that good? Sir, would you like to try some?" Adolf lifted her chin directly and kissed her, using his tongue to scoop the food from her mouth. "This tastes even better." Brenda, when she woke up again, she was already back on the large bed in the bedroom. Adolf lay beside her, with a small night light on, holding a book in his hands. Brenda said with utmost indifference, "Why aren't you keeping your little Dana company?" Adolf closed the book and set it aside. "She's on her period today. It's not convenient." Brenda noticed the title of the book, Baking Basics, Cookies and Cakes. She suddenly remembered the past. Adolf when he still loved her. How he would cross the entire city just to buy her roasted sweet potatoes from the school gate if she casually mentioned craving them. A 3-hour round trip. And he kept the sweet potatoes warm against his chest. His face and hair were covered in snow, but the sweet potatoes were still piping hot. Turns out, such devotion could also be given to another woman, Brenda. He suddenly narrowed his eyes, looking at her neck, and said, "Where's your protective charm?" Brenda found it quite amusing. It was he who knelt in prayer before the Buddha, so devout, solely for her safety and health. Yet it was also he who personally pushed her down the stairs, causing her fractures and miscarriage. "What is this, Adolf? Since you like her so much, let's get a divorce. I'll step aside and let you two be together." Adolf listened, then lightly laughed and planted a kiss on her forehead. "What nonsense are you talking? I'm just playing around with her. That silly little girl is quite amusing to tease. Once I get bored, we'll still live happily together till old age. Don't you find your words ironic?" "What do you take me for?" Adolf said. "Monogamy itself goes against animal instincts. Spending decades of one's life with the same person, no matter how much you love them, will eventually become tiresome. Occasionally having someone new to spice things up is fine, as long as we end up growing old together in the end. The rest doesn't need to be scrutinized so closely." Brenda laughed in frustration. "So if I were to find someone new to spice things up too, you'd be fine with that?" Adolf pondered for a moment before smiling. "You wouldn't do that. And what makes you so sure I wouldn't?" "You can't do it." Adolf was asleep. Brenda took 2 protective talismans from the safe and lit them with a lighter. One was for keeping Dana. He pushed her down the stairs, personally killing their child. The other one was when he used his mother's pearls to coerce her, despite her illness, into making Dana some cookies. Watching both protective charms turn to ashes, she opened the window and let the night wind scatter the remnants. Adolf woke up, groggily asking her, "Brenda, what are you doing?" Brenda replied calmly, "Nothing. Just couldn't sleep." Opening the window for some air. Early the next morning, Adolf sent Brenda back to the hospital. Brenda's attending physician was a handsome young male doctor. After reviewing Brenda's medical records, he frowned and said, "Miss Brenda, do you need me to call the police for you?" Brenda shook her head. Her mother's pearls were still in Adolf's hands. Calling the police would mean mutual destruction, and she couldn't afford to take that risk. "All right, then get some good rest. If you need any help, feel free to call me anytime. I need something now." The young male doctor looked at her. "What is it? Can I have your contact information?" The young male doctor said, "I have a work email. You can add me." "I meant your personal number." Brenda knew this was somewhat abrupt. She was also prepared to be rejected. Such a young, handsome, and elite man must surely attract plenty of women who would strike up conversations and ask for his contact details. She just wanted to test whether she was truly as spineless as Adolf had said, not even daring to spice things up a little. "Sorry. Just pretend I never said anything." After he left, Brenda heard the nurse call him, "Dr. Boris." Brenda asked the nurse, who replied, "Dr. Boris is a top talent Ardeen recruited from abroad. Despite his young age, he's already a medical doctor. However, I heard he's only here for a 3-month exchange program and will return overseas afterward." Brenda nodded, feeling somewhat regretful. She really was pitifully spineless. But that evening, Dr. Boris came by again. He seemed to be off work, already changed into casual clothes, a shirt and trousers, which made him look as elegant as jade, handsome and refined. He handed Brenda a small note with his number. "Call me anytime if you need help." Adolf came with Dana. Dana was holding a thermal lunchbox and said cheerfully, "Madam, I made you some nourishing soup. Drink it, and you'll recover faster." She was wearing a light yellow floral dress today. The Peter Pan collar was cut wide, clearly revealing the scattered red marks on her neck and collarbone. Looking at her again, her eyes were moist, cheeks flushed, and when she gazed at Adolf, there was a coquettish reproach in her shy, bashful manner. It was obvious at a glance what had just transpired. But Dana was supposed to be on her period these past few days, wasn't she? How did it happen? Adolf casually pulled out a few tissues, wiped his index and middle fingers, and then tossed them into the trash bin. The white tissues were stained with a deep red hue of blood. In the pocket of his suit pants was stuffed a piece of fabric, with a small part peeking out. Barely visible was the front bow of a woman's underwear. "Brenda, is there anything else you don't understand?" What happened before they arrived was already self-evident. Dana coquettishly said, "Madam, you must have a serious talk with the master. He always disturbs me when I'm cooking." Adolf chuckled and tapped her nose lightly. "How did I disturb you? Didn't you enjoy it too?" "Oh, sir, Don't say such nonsense. Madam might misunderstand. Brenda spoke heavily. What would I misunderstand? Misunderstand. Misunderstand that the sir and I have that kind of relationship. When were you not in that kind of relationship? Dana instantly lost her smile, her eyes slightly reddening at the corners. Madam, I may be poor and working as a maid in your household, but you can't insult my dignity like this. Adolf immediately pulled her into his arms, soothing her gently. Silly girl, why are you crying? Madam, how could she say that I have that kind of relationship with you? Sir, I'm an innocent girl who has always conducted myself properly. Being closer to you, sir, is only because you've taken care of me, and I wanted to repay your kindness. Does being a maid make me inferior? Without any dignity, Adolf gently took out a tissue to wipe her tears. Then tell me, what will it take for you to calm down? I'm just a nanny. How dare I be angry with the madam? As long as the madam drinks the soup I made, I'll be very satisfied. Adolf listened, then opened the thermal lunchbox and handed it to Brenda. Brenda, drink it. As soon as the lid was opened, a strong seafood aroma wafted out. Brenda refused. I can't drink it. She is allergic to seafood, and the symptoms are very severe. Once, it even caused her to choke, nearly costing her life. But Adolf signaled her with his eyes. I said, drink it. Adolf, you know very well I'm allergic to seafood. This is a hospital. The doctors and nurses will save you. With timely stomach pumping, it won't be life-threatening. When people are at a loss for words, they really do laugh. Brenda also laughed. How can someone change so completely? Or perhaps this was his true nature all along, and she had simply never seen him clearly. Dana was still crying. Adolf continued to patiently comfort her. He took a few pearls from his pocket and handed them to her. Here, can you drink now? Brenda hurriedly took the pearls, carefully guarding them near her heart. What about the others? Drink the soup, and I'll give you one more. Brenda drank it without hesitation, downing more than half the bucket in one go. She reached out her hand. Give it to me. Dana suddenly said, why didn't you finish it? Ma'am, do you still look down on me for being a country bumpkin? Does my stew not suit the taste of you city folks? Adolf took out another pearl but didn't give it to Brenda, but extended out the window, hovering in mid-air. Outside the hospital ward, there was a small river. If one were to fall in, they would likely never be found again. Brenda almost immediately rolled off the hospital bed, stumbled to the window, and pleaded with him. Don't. Adolf helped her up and sat her back on the bed, then placed the insulated container back in her hands, saying gently, Brenda, Dana only wants what's best for you. Don't let the girl's kindness go to waste. The allergic reaction to seafood came swiftly. She could already feel her entire throat beginning to swell, making swallowing increasingly difficult. But for her mother's pearls, she mustered all her strength to keep swallowing. Tears fell, mixing with the seafood soup, until she drank it all down. Sweetness mixed with bitterness. She could no longer distinguish anything. She threw the insulated container aside and spoke with difficulty. Give it to me. Adolf just smiled and said to Dana. See, she finished it. Be good. Stop crying. Okay. Dana finally smiled through her tears. Yes, I'll listen to you, sir. A suffocating sensation surged like a flood. Brenda struggled desperately to breathe, mustering her last ounce of strength to clutch at Adolf's pant leg. The pearl. Give it to me. What's the rush? I never said I wouldn't give it to you. A nurse passing by outside the ward saw Brenda's condition and immediately cried out. Someone help. She's choking. Unaware of how long she had been unconscious, Brenda finally regained a sliver of awareness. Her throat felt parched and hoarse, while her entire stomach seemed to be gripped by an invisible hand, twisted and torn repeatedly. She couldn't make a sound, nor could she cry. Not far away, a familiar voice seemed to growl. She just had a miscarriage, with multiple fractures and abrasions all over her body. How dare you let her have an allergic reaction? If we had been any later, she really wouldn't have made it. She recognized that voice. Yes, it's Dr. Boris. It's hard to imagine that someone as composed and self-controlled as him could lose his temper. Was it because of her? Brenda laughed at herself for being too narcissistic. Dr. Boris had no personal ties to her. He was likely just acting out of a doctor's sense of duty to save lives and heal the wounded. Dana trembled in fear from the scolding. Sir, I didn't know the mistress was allergic to seafood. I just thought seafood was nutritious and wanted her to recover sooner. It's okay. Don't be afraid. I'm so stupid. I think I've harmed the mistress again. It's okay. Brenda won't hold it against you. Brenda suddenly remembered the last time she had a seafood allergy. That was also the first time he took her to a dinner party. During the meal, a client specifically brought Brenda a king crab, saying, "Mrs. Armstrong, this was specially airlifted from Australia for you. You can't refuse such a gesture." Brenda back then. I was young and too shy to refuse, so I had to force myself to eat it. Unfortunately, the allergic reaction started after just a few bites. My throat swelled up, making it hard to breathe. Adolf carried her to the hospital, roaring, "Who let her eat seafood? Brenda, if anything happens to her, none of you will fucking live to see another day." That time, Adolf stayed by her side for 3 days and nights without sleep. When she woke up, she saw his disheveled and exhausted appearance. He tightly embraced Brenda, with such force that it almost seemed he wanted to crush her into his body. "Brenda, it's my fault for not protecting you. Don't worry, I won't let any of those people get away with it. They will all pay the price." It was only later that she learned Adolf had ordered them to be thrown into the sea, only to be pulled back up when they were nearly drowned, repeating the cycle for a full 7 days of torment. "But Adolf, I never expected that the second time in my life I'd eat seafood. It would be you forcing it down my throat." Dr. Boris entered and saw Brenda was already awake. He instructed, "You just had your stomach pumped, and the swelling in your throat hasn't completely subsided yet. Try not to speak for now." Brenda instead looked at Adolf and reached out to him again. Adolf understood her meaning and placed a pearl in her palm. "Seems you're fine. Still know how to ask me for things." Brenda put the pearl away and turned her face aside, unwilling to look at him any longer. Adolf said, "Brenda, you should get some rest first. I'll take Dana home and come see you tomorrow." Brenda couldn't speak, only mouthing the word, "Pearl." Adolf merely replied, "You'll get it." He took Dana and left. Dr. Boris didn't leave. He removed his mask and stood by Brenda's bed. "Do you need me to do anything for you?" Brenda first shook her head. After some thought, he nodded in agreement. Brenda mouthed the words, "I want to leave." Dr. Boris understood her meaning. She didn't just want to leave the hospital or her home. She wanted to leave forever, to have no further connection with Adolf. He asked her, "When do you want to leave?" "Mom's pearls haven't been fully retrieved yet. Adolf, she doesn't trust him now. She must go home herself. Also, her current physical condition requires a few days of rest." A week later, Dr. Boris nodded. "All right, I'll help you." Brenda spent 3 days on 4 at the hospital, and it wasn't until the evening of the 3rd day that Adolf came to take her home. When she entered the house, she realized it was under construction. Adolf said, "Dana didn't like the decor, so I had it torn down and redone." This house was their marital home, with all the interior design personally crafted by Brenda. On the first floor was Brenda's art studio, filled with her various painting tools and the carefully created artworks from over the years. Now, everything had been cleared out like trash. Dana's parents occasionally stay over, so this room is being vacated for them. She even specially reserved a nursery, prepared for the future baby. "But now," the decorator said, "Mr. Armstrong, are you sure this room is for the pet dog?" Adolf said, "Dana has a dog at home. She works in the city and misses that Buddy very much. Bringing it here makes it easier to take care of." Even the rose garden he once planted for Brenda in front of the villa was completely destroyed. Roses were scattered haphazardly, their petals crushed into the mud, because Dana said, "Buddy running back and forth will hurt it." Actually, Brenda wasn't surprised. She was even somewhat numb to it. She didn't care no matter how he carried on. But the floor was all torn up too. "So did Mom ever find all those scattered pearls?" "Adolf," she began in a hoarse voice, "my mother's necklace had 72 pearls in total, and you've only given me 12 so far. Where are the others?" Adolf said, "The floor's been completely torn up. They're gone. You promised you'd give them to me." "It's just 60 pearls. Why are you making such a fuss?" Adolf said, "I checked that necklace. It's not an antique, and the pearls aren't particularly rare or valuable. I'll transfer you 300,000. Go buy a few new ones." Brenda couldn't be bothered to talk to him and directly asked the workers, "Where are the broken floor materials?" The construction worker replied, "Those are all construction waste. They've already been taken to the community's recycling center." Brenda turned and left without another word. Adolf asked, "You're still sick. Where are you going?" Brenda didn't even turn her head. "Looking for pearls." Brenda rummaged through the mountain of trash, the foul stench, the filthy garbage. She no longer cared about any of it. After a night had passed, She finally found all 60 pearls. By the time she returned, her fingernails had fallen off, and her hands were covered in blood. "Oh, madam, how did you end up like this?" Adolf pulled Dana back to his side. "Don't get too close to her. She's been rummaging through garbage all night. Don't let her dirty you." Brenda was like a soulless walking corpse, ignoring everyone as she went straight upstairs, returning to the master bedroom. Yet the layout inside had completely changed as well. Everything was Dana's favorite pink and lace. Her pajamas were still lying on the large bed in the bedroom, placed together with a sexy maid outfit. Master and maid. It seems they had quite a fun time last night. Brenda opened the safe and took out 2 more protective charms. One was him forcing her to drink seafood soup. The other one was destroyed by his own hands, erasing all their memories in this house. The flickering flames consumed not just the protective talisman, but also her years of feelings for Adolf. Only one protective talisman remained in the safe. She took it out and placed it in her pocket. Her documents were also packed up and placed in the inner layer of her clothes before she left. She probably wouldn't be coming back to this house again. In a week, she would be completely free. Just as she finished everything and was about to leave, Adolf caught up with her. "Brenda, why isn't your phone working?" Brenda looked at it. The battery was dead, and it had automatically shut down. He said, "Your grandmother is not doing well and wants to see you one last time. Get in the car. I'll take you there now." After her parents passed away, Brenda almost completely lost contact with her maternal family. Only her grandmother remained. The elderly woman often called Brenda to ask how she was doing and repeatedly reminded her, "If that boy treats you poorly, come and tell Grandma, and Grandma will handle it." At that time Brenda was still immersed in the sweetness of love, nestling against her grandmother's knees and cooing, "Don't worry, Grandma. He treats me very well." Grandma merely combed her long hair gently and sighed, "I hope he will always treat you well, but sincerity changes in the blink of an eye. I just hope I'll still be around to protect you when that time comes." Brenda arrived at the hospital to find the emergency room already packed with people. Doctors and nurses all wore grave expressions, as if facing a formidable enemy. Numerous instruments displayed values she couldn't comprehend, yet without exception, they all sounded alarms. "Grandma." Brenda collapsed at the entrance of the emergency room. "Grandma, I'm here. Brenda has come to see you." Grandma seemed to sense the arrival of her beloved granddaughter. As the alarms from all the instruments suddenly ceased, the doctor opened the door to the emergency room and said softly, "The elderly lady is beyond help now, with multiple organ failure. This is the final rally before the end. Go and accompany her on her last journey." Brenda was utterly heartbroken, stumbling to her knees by her grandmother's bedside. "Brenda, you're here." Brenda clutched her grandmother's frail hand, tears streaming uncontrollably. "Grandma, I'm here. Please don't go. Don't leave me." Silly child. When people grow old, they must eventually depart. Grandma is just afraid that after I'm gone, no one will be there to protect you if you're bullied. Brenda sobbed uncontrollably. "Grandma, I regret so much not listening to you, not obeying Mom and Dad. Has he really treated you poorly?" Grandma trembled with anger. "How dare he bully my granddaughter? I'll fight him with my last breath if I have to." Cough, cough, cough. "Grandma, please rest. Don't get too worked up." Grandma was truly at death's door now, too weak to even open her eyes. He simply waved his hand lightly, signaling her to come closer. With an aged voice, she gave her granddaughter one last instruction. "Brenda, don't be afraid. Grandma has left you a backup plan. The Dr. Boris at this hospital is the grandson of an old friend of mine. You can go to him for help." "Grandma, Grandma." Beep. After speaking her last words, Grandma's heart stopped beating forever. The doctors and nurses came to cover Grandma with a white sheet and forcibly pulled Brenda away. "Grandma, Brenda." Adolf suddenly said urgently, "Come back with me for a moment. Dana's parents are here. They heard you're good at painting, so they want you to paint a family portrait in oil for them." Grandma was wheeled away, to be taken to the morgue. Brenda chased after the gurney carrying Grandma, stumbling and collapsing to the ground. Adolf forcibly hoisted her onto his shoulder and walked away. "We need to hurry. Let's not keep the 2 elders waiting." Brenda bounced on his shoulder, her sobs broken. "Adolf, I beg you, let me see Grandma off for the last time. Please, I'm begging you." Adolf didn't pause his steps at all. "The dead can't appreciate anything, whether you send it or not. Your grandmother won't know. Focus on the living first. Dana's parents can't be neglected." Back home, Dana's parents had already arrived. Adolf respectfully served tea to the couple, his attitude humble and deferential, just like a prospective son-in-law meeting his future parents-in-law. Dana's father asked his daughter, "Dana, is he good to you?" Dana blushed shyly. "Mr. Adolf treats me exceptionally well. He even renovated this entire house just for me, all according to my preferences. Mom, Dad, in the future, you and Buddy can all live here with me." Dana's mother said, "Isn't this inappropriate? You're here to work as a nanny, not as the lady of the house." But Adolf said, "There's nothing inappropriate about it. Just treat this place as your own home." "Mr. Armstrong, are you married?" Adolf's eyes flickered. "Yes, but widowed." Dana's mother glanced at the zombie-like Brenda beside her and asked, "Then who is she?" She's a friend of mine. I specially invited her to paint your family portrait." Adolf whispered, "Miss Brenda, I'll leave today's family portrait to you." Miss Brenda. He had already severed all ties with Brenda completely, so the next step would be to kill her, become truly widowed, and then marry Dana. Brenda turned and entered the storage room, preparing the painting supplies. Dana's mother cheered up but still maintained her air of superiority. "Though you're wealthy, you're also widowed. Our Dana is a pure maiden. You're the one marrying up." Adolf nodded respectfully and said, "Indeed." After finishing the painting, Brenda returned to her room. The painting had drained too much of her energy, leaving her utterly exhausted. Adolf came in holding a glass of milk. "Brenda, you barely ate anything this afternoon. Have some milk." Brenda looked at the milky white liquid, recalling what he had said earlier that afternoon. Married, but widowed. So this glass of milk contains. Tonight, Adolf seemed especially considerate. He sat down beside her and gently held her, saying, "Be good, drink it." Brenda said, "I'm going to the restroom. I'll drink it when I come back." Adolf had no suspicions and nodded, saying, "All right, I'll wait here for you." Brenda went to the restroom and called Dr. Boris. Dr. Boris listened, then simply said, "Leave it to me." In the bathroom, Brenda lit the last talisman for peace. Finally, it was all over. All the love and past affection were flushed down the toilet along with the ashes. When she returned to the bedroom, she didn't say a word and drank the milk. Soon, she lost consciousness. Before her consciousness faded, she seemed to see the red and blue lights of an ambulance approaching from a distance. When she woke up again, the whole world was swaying. Dr. Boris said, "Don't worry, you're already on a ship to Australia. We'll dock in about 3 days." On the ship, Dr. Boris told her what had happened after she fainted. Adolf didn't intend to kill her, only gave her sleeping pills. When she was sent to the hospital, she was merely in a coma and not in any life-threatening condition. Dr. Boris showed her a video captured by the hospital surveillance. Adolf slipped a bank card to a young nurse and whispered, "Inject my wife with a sleeping pill every day to ensure she doesn't wake up. But don't actually harm her life." The young nurse asked, "How long should we keep injecting her?" "I'll let you know when the time comes. It shouldn't be too long. I've recently gotten a new toy and have been a bit obsessed with it. Once I'm tired of it, I'll come to take my wife home." The screen goes black. Playback finished. Dr. Boris said, "I told him that your body was weak, and what would have been a safe dose of sleeping pills was more than your system could handle. You had already passed away from cardiac arrest in the early hours 3 days ago. I've taken care of things at the hospital, and as per your grandmother's instructions, we used her body to replace yours and sent it to the crematorium." "Grandma." Brenda felt a dull ache in her heart. Dr. Boris said, "Grandma also left a recording for you." He played another recording again. Brenda. As soon as Grandma's voice sounded, Brenda burst into tears. "You must live well, live vigorously, live happier and more joyful than anyone else. This is the last thing Grandma can do for you. Don't let her hopes down." Brenda. "It's okay if you make the wrong choice. What matters is having the courage to start over. You're still young with endless possibilities." Grandma, along with Mom and Dad, will all be watching over you from heaven. The glow of the setting sun shone down, warm and serene. It felt like Grandma's hand, gently caressing her face. Brenda stopped crying and gazed at the sunset glow over the sea. Yes, Grandma had fought for her new life, and she must live it well. She would live even more brilliantly and dazzlingly. For Mom, Dad, and Grandma. In the afternoon, the Armstrong family's villa was filled with an undeniable amorous atmosphere in the bedroom's large bed. Dana leaned against Adolph's chest, panting slightly as she asked, "Mr. Adolf, Isn't this a bit too bold of us? What if the madam finds out and gets angry? She's so jealous. If she fires me, I'll never get to see you again." As she spoke, she pursed her lips, her otherwise merely delicate face instantly taking on a pitiful expression. Adolf always found Brenda radiant and dazzlingly beautiful. So much so that he felt both irresistibly drawn to her and yet somehow unworthy, as if he could only admire her from afar. But Dana was different. She had neither education nor skills, just a pretty face and an innocent charm. Moreover, she was a maid who relied on him and his family. Her eyes filled with nothing but him. From her, he gained an unprecedented sense of superiority, the kind that comes from being worshipped. "You can rest assured. The mistress won't be back for a while." Adolf reached out to embrace Dana, chuckling smugly as he said, "We'll have plenty of time to get close from now on. You can see me whenever you want." He thought of Brenda in the hospital, feeling a fleeting pang of guilt and remorse in his heart. But when Dana wrapped her arms around his neck and leaned toward him with a delicate, dependent posture, those thoughts instantly vanished without a trace. Dana learned that Brenda wouldn't be returning home anytime soon and was immediately overjoyed. But she didn't show it. Instead, she continued to feign concern and asked, "Really? You'd better not be lying to me." Adolf sweet-talked her effortlessly. "Of course not." Dana probed him step by step. "But this is your marital home. When the lady of the house was here, I wasn't even allowed to enter freely. If she found out I'm here wearing her pajamas, leaning on her pillow, and sleeping with her man, she'd be furious." These words made Adolf itch with desire, his breathing suddenly turning heavy. Without warning, he flipped over and pinned Dana beneath him, kissing her deeply as she giggled. Just outside the door in the hallway, Aunt Lucy, who was polishing the stair railing, heard the commotion and immediately realized what they were up to. She froze for a moment, then fled downstairs as if escaping, nearly colliding with the gardener who had returned to fetch his pruning shears. Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob caught her by the arm and asked in surprise, "What's happened?" Auntie Lucy waved her hand dismissively. "Don't even ask. At my age, encountering such a thing is utterly mortifying. The master and that young maid." "Oh." She paused for a long while mid-sentence, yet still couldn't bring herself to speak directly of what had transpired inside. Uncle Bob was about the same age as her, so there was nothing he didn't understand. The two of them exchanged glances, neither daring to speak the truth outright, only hoping that Adolf wouldn't be too outrageous and would at least show some restraint. But Adolf, finally able to fool around with Dana without any worries, couldn't be bothered with such concerns. For an entire week, the two of them indulged in wild, unrestrained frolicking in the bedroom, exploring every corner of the suite without inhibition. Even their meals were delivered by Auntie Lucy. Auntie Lucy would answer the phone, always setting the tray down and leaving immediately, afraid that lingering too long would subject her to those unbearable sounds again. That night, Dana had just stepped out of the shower when she saw Adolf thoughtfully drying her hair for her. Thinking this was the perfect moment for their relationship to deepen, she asked softly, "When are you going to divorce your wife and marry me?" Adolf paused for a moment before brushing her off. "It's not the right time yet. Just wait a little longer." Dana, with her back turned to him, naturally couldn't see the impatience on his face. She resorted to her usual tactics, coquettishly pleading, "But I really can't wait any longer. I want to be with you openly. We're already together. It's not the same." "How is it different? Now when people mention Mrs. Armstrong, they only think of Brenda. I want to stay by your side as Mrs. Armstrong." Dana stopped mid-sentence when she noticed Adolf had frozen. By the time she realized something was wrong and turned around, he had already walked away. These words were ultimately spoken too hastily. Dana called out anxiously, "Sir, where are you going?" Adolf, the opportunity to spend time alone with her here was rare and precious. Now that his attitude had suddenly turned cold, if he were to grow tired of her because of this, the days ahead would be difficult. Dana hurriedly got up, her long hair disheveled as she chased after him. But Adolf didn't even look back, walking straight past the floor-to-ceiling window to the balcony. The night was deep, with only a cold moon outside. Adolf had just finished fooling around with Dana when he suddenly found himself in such a desolate environment. Unaccustomed, he immediately furrowed his brows. Then, with practiced ease, he reached for the cigarette box and lighter on the nearby coffee table, lit one, and took a deep drag. The nicotine successfully eased his mood. Dana deliberately made noise by leaning against the floor-to-ceiling window. Seeing that Adolf clearly heard but showed no intention of turning around, she couldn't help but reveal a look of resentment. After an extremely brief silence, she still managed to put on a smile, softened her demeanor, and took the initiative to walk over and embrace him from behind. "Sir, are you angry with me?" She pressed her cheek against Adolf's back, deliberately softening her voice to appear vulnerable. "I'm sorry for causing you trouble, but I did it because I love you so much. No one has ever treated me this well before." This attitude successfully pleased Adolf. The impatience he had felt from being rushed was instantly diluted by Dana's tender affection. He softened his tone and said, "No, I just wanted some time alone. You should go back first." Somehow, the moment Dana began demanding a formal commitment from him, she became unbearably vulgar in his eyes. Dana, seeing that he seemed about to relent, she wouldn't let such an easily attainable opportunity slip away. She tightened her arms around his waist, her fingertips slipping beneath the sash of his robe with practiced ease, skillfully employing her seductive techniques. Adolf, the hand holding the cigarette, suddenly froze, and his breathing gradually grew more rapid. His back straightened instantly, as if trying to resist the external temptation. But before he could finish the cigarette, he succumbed to the teasing, hastily stubbing it out and tossing it into the ashtray. The next moment, without warning, he turned around and directly scooped Dana up into his arms, carrying her back to the bedroom amid her deliberately coy giggles. The sound of their playful banter echoed across the large bed for a long time, not ceasing until the early hours of the morning. The next morning, Dana's father, Dana's mother had their fill of novelty in the villa but couldn't resist stirring up new antics. Seeing that Adolf and Dana didn't even step out of the bedroom, with meals delivered to their door by Auntie Lucy, they followed suit and began ordering her around. Auntie Lucy preferred to avoid trouble and swallowed her pride, agreeing to their demands. However, Dana's father, Dana's mother, having gotten their way this time, soon began acting as if they owned the place, taking advantage of Adolf being preoccupied with Dana all day. They started throwing their weight around in the villa. Dana's father slept until the sun was high in the sky before getting up. He propped his feet on the sofa, rubbed them together, and yawned, saying, "Eating the same few dishes every day is so boring it's killing me." Dana's mother sat up on the sofa across from him and chimed in with a complaint. Sigh. No wonder some people can only be maids their whole lives. Utterly lacking in initiative, she saw Auntie Lucy ignoring them, continuing to dust the ornaments on the side cabinet as if she hadn't heard a thing. This instantly fueled her anger, and she raised her voice sharply. "Hey, we're talking to you. Did you hear? Cooking the same few dishes every day. Don't tell me you think we're easy to fool." Auntie Lucy could no longer avoid them and had no choice but to brace herself and explain. "The menu was set when the madam was here. Now that she's away, Mr. Armstrong hasn't said to change it, so I'm just following the rules." Brenda kept everything in perfect order at home, so even while she was in the hospital, the household ran smoothly without any chaos. Dana's mother, however, was seething with anger. She glared fiercely at Auntie Lucy and snapped, "Stop bringing up Mr. Adolf and the lady of the house. Now that Mr. Adolf is my son-in-law, it's only a matter of time before my daughter becomes Mrs. Armstrong." She never set any dietary rules, so from now on, the menu will be decided by us. But Auntie Lucy started to say that this was up to Mr. Adolf, but Dana's father cut her off imperiously. "No buts. Who wants to eat those bland dishes? We're having a full Manchuhan imperial feast for lunch today. Get to it right away." He waved his hand grandly, as if such a lavish meal could be prepared at a moment's notice. Auntie Lucy had worked at the Armstrong household for so many years, yet this was the first time she had heard such an outrageous request. She immediately retorted, "That's absolutely impossible. A full Manchuhan imperial feast takes up an entire table. How could I possibly prepare it all by myself? Besides, even if I could, you'd never finish it all. The Manchuhan imperial feast is the representative banquet of the dynasty court, consisting of a total of 108 dishes. Even ordering such a feast at a restaurant would require a reservation well in advance. Not to mention that currently, the Armstrong household only has Auntie Lucy to handle the cooking." Dana's father could think of no more extravagant feast than the Manchuhan imperial banquet. Seeing that Auntie Lucy dared to object, he immediately raised his voice and scolded, "If you can't make it, can't you just buy it? We're not short on money now. As a housekeeper, just follow orders obediently." When he said this, he completely forgot that his own daughter had once worked as a housekeeper too, and one with less experience and lower status than Auntie Lucy at that. And Adolf had never promised to marry Dana. Brenda had always been kind and lenient toward the household maids and servants. This was the first time someone in the Armstrong family had abused their power so blatantly. Auntie Lucy trembled with anger, but she was no match for the two loudmouths in an argument. The only thing she could do was swipe the Armstrong family's dedicated grocery shopping bank card and order a lavish meal for Dana's father and Dana's mother. The hotel was naturally thrilled to receive such a large order, but when they arrived and saw Dana's father and Dana's mother, they were immediately baffled and asked, "Is it just the two of you dining?" Dana's father, finally seizing the chance to show off, practically looked down his nose at them and snorted, "What? Looking down on us? This is my daughter and son-in-law's home. Do you think we can't pay?" Dana's mother couldn't wait to grab her chopsticks and start eating voraciously. Between bites, she bragged, "As long as we're happy, spending however much we want is our freedom, even if we can't finish the food and have to throw it away. It's none of you lowly people's business. All right, don't disturb us while we eat." The hotel staff had never encountered such imperious guests before. Stunned, they quickly retreated, afraid that lingering too long might infect them with the same obnoxious habit of showing off. Once out the door, they immediately called their colleagues to share this bizarre experience. "I've truly seen it all today. Who knew the wealthy folks living in the Villa District could have such ill-mannered parents? I can't imagine how their daughter has put up with them all this time. And she actually dared to bring them home to live with her. Doesn't she worry about ruining her own marriage?" Mrs. Armstrong, I've met her before. Not only is she beautiful, but she also has an exceptional grace about her. She doesn't seem like she came from this kind of family, but I haven't seen her around lately. Could it be that she's divorced, Mr. Armstrong? TSK. Men really do turn bad once they get rich. But Mr. Armstrong's taste is truly awful. Now he's added a pair of nouveau riche in-laws to the household. No matter how vast the family fortune is, it can't withstand such extravagance. This piece of gossip spread like wildfire and soon circulated among the staff at their hotel. Meanwhile, Dana's father and Dana's mother were feasting at the Armstrongs' home, eating non-stop from noon until evening. Seeing that this lavish meal couldn't possibly be finished, they callously ordered Auntie Lucy to throw the leftovers away. Auntie Lucy, who had just packed up and was about to leave, reminded them, "My working hours only last until 7 p.m. Dana's father immediately changed his expression. "What do you mean? You earn such a high salary and want to leave at 7 p.m. Don't think you can fool us. Our daughter Dana once said you earn much more than her but leave earlier. Starting today, that has to change. It must change." Dana's mother snapped, "Now my daughter is the lady of the Armstrong household. If you don't want to work, I'll have her fire you. Plenty of people would take this job." Auntie Lucy trembled with anger, but thinking of her son, born with a disability and relying on her salary for regular hospital treatments, she had no choice but to swallow her pride and continue working instead of leaving. Dana's father and mother were not satisfied with this. Instead, they stayed to supervise, claiming they were afraid she might slack off. Auntie Lucy had no choice but to clean the dining room without a moment's rest. It wasn't until Uncle Bob couldn't bear to watch any longer that he came in from the garden to help. Working together, they finally managed to clean the dining room spotless by 9 p.m., restoring it to its original state. Dana's mother saw this but still didn't want to let Auntie Lucy go home after work. She then ordered Auntie Lucy, "I'm tired. Help me and my husband wash our feet before you leave." Auntie Lucy couldn't take it anymore and was so angry she couldn't even speak. Dana's father, who had intended to make things difficult for her, added fuel to the fire. "Who are you scowling at? Not happy, are you? Let me tell you, if my daughter whispers a few words, you'll be out of here in no time." Uncle Bob couldn't take it anymore and slammed his hand on the table, saying, "Don't go too far. The master will bring the mistress back sooner or later, and when that happens, it's your family who should be kicked out of this house." Dana's father, who had been acting arrogantly in the Armstrong household for so long, was confronted for the first time. He pointed at Uncle Bob's nose and yelled, "You're just a gardener. Who do you think you are to talk to me? Watch out, or I'll have Dana fire you too." Uncle Bob sneered, "Your daughter is nothing but a shameless homewrecker. If she really had any say in this house, I'd quit without her whispering in anyone's ear. What kind of people are you?" Before he could finish, Dana's father punched Uncle Bob in the face, knocking him to the ground, and arrogantly kicked him twice. Auntie Lucy hurried forward to support Uncle Bob, only to be scratched several times by Dana's mother, who rushed in to take sides. The four of them immediately became entangled in a brawl, the commotion alerting the property management on their nightly rounds. The security guard stood outside the courtyard and glanced into the villa. Seeing the intense fight among the four, he quickly dialed the police. Adolf and Dana were completely absorbed in trying new moves in the upstairs bedroom, oblivious to the chaos downstairs, until the arriving police knocked on their bedroom door, prompting them to hastily throw on robes and answer. The officer took in their attire and Dana's suspicious blush, instantly understanding why they'd missed the uproar below. Clearing his throat awkwardly, he said, "You're the homeowners, right? There's a fight downstairs. Come take a look." A fight broke out. Adolf wore a face full of confusion, as if suddenly unable to comprehend their words, and retorted, "Who and who? How could such a thing happen in my house?" The police explained the situation as they led them downstairs. "It's your father-in-law and mother-in-law with the gardener and nanny in your household." Adolf visibly darkened upon hearing Dana's father, Dana's mother referred to as his in-laws, and when he saw Uncle Bob with his face covered in blood and the implicated Auntie Lucy, his expression turned as cold as frost. By now, Dana's father had already been pinned to the ground for verbally abusing the police, while Dana's mother sat on the floor throwing a tantrum. Upon seeing Adolf and Dana coming downstairs, they immediately began shouting and making a scene. "Son-in-law, you're finally here. I was just teaching these servants who don't know their place a lesson for you, and they actually called these petty cops. I told them you're my son-in-law, but not only did they not treat me with respect, they even dared to lay hands on me. Hurry up and tell them to let me go." "No, we can't let them off so easily. We need to call their superiors and have these snobbish little cops fired immediately." The two were completely unaware of how disgraceful their behavior was, still smugly ordering around the son-in-law in their minds. Dana knew Adolf had always cared about his reputation. Seeing his obvious displeasure, she quickly signaled her parents with her eyes and said, "Dad, Mom, hurry up and apologize to the officers. Stop making a scene." As she spoke, she cautiously observed Adolf's expression, fearing that his dissatisfaction with her parents might extend to her. Unfortunately, Dana's father, Dana's mother still couldn't read the room and continued to boss people around arrogantly. Dana's father felt his pride was wounded and spoke even more harshly, threatening Adolf, "If you can't handle this matter to my satisfaction, don't even think about marrying my daughter." "Dad, what nonsense are you saying?" Dana shrieked in an attempt to intervene, but it was already too late. The atmosphere instantly froze over. Adolf glanced at Dana's father and turned away without hesitation. As he walked upstairs, he said over his shoulder, "Fine, no time like the present. Take your daughter away today." Before the words had fully left his mouth, he was already ascending the steps. The police officer restraining Dana's father hurriedly asked, "Mr. Armstrong, as the head of this household and with the incident occurring under your roof, how should we proceed if you're not present?" Adolf was not only Auntie Lucy and Uncle Bob's employer but also Dana's father's proclaimed son-in-law. By both sentiment and logic, he ought to have stayed. But he only paused for a moment before calmly stating, "I still have company matters to attend to and can't spare time for these issues. I'll leave it to you to handle them officially." Before the words had even finished, he had already taken steps forward again, soon slamming the bedroom door shut with a bang, making it clear that he didn't want Dana to follow. Where in the world would there be a son-in-law who treats his parents-in-law with such terrible attitude? The police officers exchanged glances. Although they didn't understand the exact situation within this family, Uncle Bob was sitting nearby with his face covered in blood, clearly seriously injured. Under these circumstances, it was obviously more urgent to first clarify the sequence of events. Following Dana's father, the police officer exchanged a glance with his colleague and reached for the handcuffs at his waist, clearly intending to take him back to the police station. Once the charges of intentional assault and resisting arrest were combined, he would likely spend at least a few months behind bars. Dana's mother, who bullied the weak but feared the strong, saw that the police were serious and began wailing while slapping her thighs. "This is unjust, old man. After all the effort we put into raising our daughter, we just wanted to enjoy some comfort here. If we'd known it would come to this, we never should have come to visit her," she screamed hoarsely, as if the two of them were truly innocent elderly victims rather than the petty individuals who, not long ago, had been shamelessly overstepping boundaries and gleefully threatening to fire Auntie Lucy. Uncle Bob's injury was caused by Dana's father punching him square on the bridge of the nose. Dizzy with pain, he saw Dana's mother still daring to twist the truth. Furious, He pointed at her and said, "Officers, it was this couple who beat me up. You must not let them off. I'll pursue this to the end." "That's right. I can testify too." Aunt Lucy, grateful for Uncle Bob's intervention and disheartened by Adolph's impatient demeanor, now declared firmly, "At worst, I'll get fired. When Madam returns, I'll tell her I'm quitting this job." Brenda was around. When had the Armstrong household ever been thrown into such chaos? Dana, seeing the two of them united and Adolph clearly fed up with her family, panicked, forgetting all about maintaining the dignity of a future Mrs. Armstrong. She humbly approached Uncle Bob and pleaded, "This time, it was my father's fault. We'll provide all due compensation. Can't we just let it go? You're quite adaptable when it comes to bending with the wind." Uncle Bob loathed her to the core. Seeing her approach to plead for mercy, he mercilessly exposed her true colors, saying, "Don't think I don't know. The moment the police leave, you'll immediately put on a different face." His attitude was so resolute, making it clear there was no chance he would relent. Aunt Lucy, who had just been thoroughly humiliated by her parents, would certainly not agree either. Dana was as frantic as an ant on a hot griddle. Seeing that they couldn't be persuaded, she thought of appealing to the police instead. However, the officers wouldn't entertain her tactics at all and sternly warned her on the spot, "Please do not interfere with our law enforcement." As the cursing Dana's father was about to be taken away, Adolph also came downstairs. Having changed his clothes, the gazes of everyone in the living room fell upon him, hoping he would step forward to uphold justice or at least say something. Yet, he ignored everyone, including his own employees, Uncle Bob and Auntie Lucy, and walked straight out the door without a second glance. "Sir, wait for me." Dana clutched the collar of her nightgown, not even bothering to change her slippers, and chased after Adolph. She caught his sleeve just before he got into the car and pleaded pitifully, "Please don't be angry with me, okay? My parents have had a hard life. They can't help being a little uncouth." As she spoke, her face flushed with shame, acknowledging how vulgar her parents' words and behavior were, utterly mismatched with the Armstrong family's villa. But now that they were here, her family was determined to stay for good, no matter what. Adolph couldn't help but feel furious at the thought of Dana's father treating him like a son-in-law to boss around, and his impatience with Dana grew as well. Let go. This was truly hating the house along with the crow, taking his anger out on her. Hearing this, Dana immediately tightened her grip on Adolph's sleeve. She stepped in front of him and softened her voice. "I know you're busy, and I didn't mean to disturb you. I just wanted to tell you that I'll definitely talk to my parents and make sure they never embarrass you like this again." To prove her loyalty to Adolph, she didn't hesitate to belittle Dana's father and Dana's mother in her words. Anyone else would have frowned at such remarks, but he, on the contrary, found it quite satisfying. Adolph most admired Dana for the fact that she could never surpass him, being nothing more than a daughter vine that could only cling to him. Seeing that she still had some sense, his attitude softened slightly as he said, "Don't worry, you are you, and your parents are your parents. I'm not angry with you." Dana seized this opening, wrapping her hands, which had been clutching her sleeves, around his waist, feigning fragility as she continued whispering sweet nothings. "This time, my parents really went too far. Don't worry, I'll definitely send Uncle Bob to the hospital. I won't let this affect your work." Adolph was in the midst of a career upswing and could least afford a scandal affecting the company's stock price. The actions of Dana's father and Dana's mother were practically dancing on his biggest nerve. Dana inwardly groaned in frustration, but on the surface, she continued coaxing him with sweet words, even abandoning her pride to tempt him. "When you come back, I'll wear that new lingerie set for you. Okay, the bunny girl one." Her voice eventually dropped to a whisper that made one's heart itch. Adolph interrupted by the police's knock at a critical moment. He was already frustrated and gloomy. Now, thinking of that outfit that made his heart race, his breathing suddenly became rapid. Dana seizing the moment, she lifted her face, deliberately maintaining a pitiful expression, and looked up at him with an adoring gaze. Adolph, unable to suppress the surging desire any longer, he pulled her into his arms without a care for the risk of being seen outside, indulging in a passionate kiss with her. When the two reluctantly parted, Dana was already disheveled and weak in the knees. Seizing the moment, she asked breathlessly, "What about the police?" "Handle it yourself." Adolph was in high spirits but still had no intention of staying. Glancing at his wristwatch, he pulled the car door open again and said, "All right, I have business to attend to. We'll continue this when I get back." Dana wanted to push further, to persuade Adolf to return and back her up. But after chasing a few steps, she resignedly stopped, realizing she had made several missteps over the past 2 days, displeasing him 2 or 3 times already. She feared that pressing him too hard might only irritate him further. By now, the police in the villa had completely subdued Dana's father and were escorting him to the police car. Dana's mother, seeing that they were actually serious, wailed and followed behind. When she spotted Dana returning, she immediately cried out as if grasping at a lifeline. "Hurry and save your father. Otherwise, if he goes to jail, it'll affect you too. You'll never become Mrs. Armstrong." Her voice was so loud it seemed she feared no one would hear, making Dana turn pale and then flush with embarrassment, her expression utterly grim. But she truly couldn't afford to have a father with a criminal record now, so she had no choice but to swallow her pride and plead with the police. "I'm sorry. My parents were in the wrong. They've lived in the countryside all their lives and aren't used to city ways. They had a bit to drink tonight, which is why they got into a fight. I apologize on their behalf. Please give him another chance. I swear he'll never do it again. Uncle Bob, Auntie Lucy, I know you don't like me, but I promise they'll change. I'll cover all the medical bills and compensation for lost wages." Judging solely by these words, they were undoubtedly sincere enough on their own. The police saw her bowing and apologizing as she spoke, while Adolf, who should have stayed to take responsibility, left without hesitation. They couldn't be bothered to press the matter further and simply waved their hands, saying, "Forget it. Your parents didn't actually assault an officer, so we'll let it go. But whether to press charges will depend on the victims. They had to enforce the law impartially. As for whether Dana's father would ultimately face criminal charges, that would depend on the stance of the 2 victims, Uncle Bob and Auntie Lucy." Dana changed her attitude faster than flipping a page. To achieve her goal, she didn't hesitate to bow repeatedly to Uncle Bob and Auntie Lucy, even pretending she was about to kneel. Uncle Bob and Auntie Lucy had never seen such a scene before. They waved their hands repeatedly and said, "Forget it. Stop pretending. Don't we know you? If you really kneel, we'd worry it'd shorten our lives. Anyway, as long as you stay here for 1 more day, Auntie Lucy and I will each take a day off to recover. This counts as a work injury." The fact that they were willing to make demands meant they were ready to compromise. Hearing this, Dana nearly burst into tears of joy. She showered them with endless praise, arranged for someone to accompany them to the hospital, and finally managed to escort them, along with the police, out the Armstrong family's front gate. Dana's father, seeing the police had truly left, immediately regained his domineering demeanor and barked at Dana's mother. "Quick, give me a shoulder rub. Those damn cops really went all out." Dana's mother obeyed while complaining to her daughter. "Honestly, how could you not hear all the commotion downstairs? If you'd just brought Adolf down earlier and spared him the embarrassment, none of this would have been such a hassle." The 2 of them took turns berating Dana, as if the entire mess was her fault for mishandling things, rather than acknowledging their own sudden wealth had inflated their egos, driving them to flaunt superiority over people from their former social class. Dana felt utterly humiliated today. She sat down in frustration and complained, "Dad, Mom, can you 2 stop holding me back? I barely managed to settle things. And besides, Adolf hates it when women pressure him for commitment. Can't you be a little smarter?" After today's incident, Adolf might not blame her outright, but he'd definitely reconsider marrying her. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say all her efforts were wasted. Yet, Dana's father and Dana's mother not only failed to comfort her but instead unanimously began criticizing her. "You're so much younger than him. Youth and beauty are your greatest assets. You should have just let Adolf order them to release the person. I refuse to believe he'd ignore such a small favor if he were truly infatuated with you. Your father is right. If you can't even command a man, wasn't sleeping with him all this time a complete waste? Think we're embarrassing you, don't you? Have you forgotten who taught you to scheme your way into replacing Brenda? If you can't make Adolf obey your every word, you're utterly useless." These heartless accusations filled Dana with humiliated fury, her resentment boiling uncontrollably. Yet all she could do now was admit they were right. Adolf treated Brenda far better than he did her. At this point, she had no choice but to redouble her efforts. Dana could no longer sit still at this thought. She feared someone might follow her example and take advantage of Adolf being alone in the office to seduce him. She rushed back to her bedroom at top speed, carefully dressed up, put on lingerie, then draped a coat over it, and hurried to the company overnight. At first glance, This outfit seemed utterly ordinary, but with just a little trick, unbuttoning a few buttons of her coat, she was sure Adolf wouldn't remain indifferent. Soon, they'd fight on the bed and make up right after. And she could even try something new in his office. Dana had envisioned it beautifully, but when she arrived outside Adolf's office, standing in the hallway ready to knock, her expression instantly changed. In the office just a door away, Adolf was laughing and joking with his buddies. With so many people around, how could she possibly showcase her charm? Just as Dana was hesitating whether to turn back and stick to the original plan of waiting for Adolf at home, someone suddenly mentioned her name. Mr. Adolf. You've been involved with that little maid named Dana for a while now, haven't you? Compared to your wife, she's not only plain-looking and average in figure, but also dim-witted. As for family background and education, she doesn't have a single redeeming quality. I really don't know what you see in her. The speaker was one of Adolf's usual partners in debauchery. In just a few words, he compared Dana and Brenda, utterly dismissing the former as worthless. Dana immediately lost her composure. She withdrew her hand from the door and took several deep breaths to steady her emotions. Adolf would probably say something in her defense. Right. Holding on to this hope, she heard him describe her to his brothers in a dismissive tone. She's nowhere near as good as your sister-in-law. His brother eagerly chimed in. Of course not. Sister-in-law is a stunning beauty. No one can compare to her. Adolf not only agreed but also shamelessly critiqued Dana. It's not just about looks. I used to think she had some youthful charm. But after sleeping with her, there's really nothing special about her. He's been fooling around with Dana for so long that he's probably getting bored by now. It's about time to ditch her and bring Brenda back home. His brother noticed his attitude and joked half seriously. If you're not interested anymore, how about passing her to me? I've never tried a woman of this type before. These people were discussing enthusiastically, not treating Dana as someone of their own class at all. Adolf didn't feel the slightest bit offended either. Without hesitation, he agreed. What's the big deal? I'll let you have a go with her once I'm done. These words made it seem as if Dana was not a living person, but a toy that could be traded at will. Dana felt her entire body turn cold. So all her efforts to please him for so long meant nothing in his eyes. But she dared not make a sound, only thinking of leaving quickly before they noticed her. Amidst the lively banter and laughter, someone mimicked the tone and provocatively asked, "So, is the wife up for some fun too?" The moment those words were spoken, the atmosphere in the office instantly shifted. First, the laughter vanished without a trace, followed by a loud crash. Adolf suddenly flew into a rage, hurling an ashtray in the direction of the speaker. The brothers fell silent, not daring to utter another word. Adolf, after smashing the ashtray, his face turned even more livid as he maintained a stony silence, his gaze fixed on the face of the person who had joked, as if he was ready to fight to the death at any moment. With no other choice, the man had to brace himself and apologize. "I'm sorry, Mr. Adolf. I was just joking. No, I was talking nonsense out of a momentary lapse. Please don't take it to heart. How would I dare offend your wife? I'll never dare say such things again." Seeing that Adolf's expression remained grim, the others quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Yeah, he was just blabbering nonsense. We've known each other for so long. Who doesn't know that only your wife is Mr. Adolf's heart and soul? Even thinking about anyone else is a capital offense. You really shouldn't say such things out of the blue like that. My bad. My bad. I shouldn't have compared sister-in-law to that kind of woman." These final words shattered Dana's last line of defense. Why is it that Brenda gets to be Adolf's beloved, while I'm just some woman who can be casually given away to others? The next second, unable to bear it any longer, she pushed open the office door and rushed to Adolf, her eyes red as she demanded, "I came all this way to surprise you, and this is how you treat me." The brothers felt somewhat awkward seeing her suddenly appear here, but since Adolf, the person involved, couldn't even be bothered to look up at her, why should they worry about it? Might as well just enjoy the show here. Adolf retorted displeasedly. "Who allowed you to come in?" Dana stood frozen in place as if struck by lightning, accusing with a tearful voice, "So you didn't actually have urgent work to deal with? You were just brushing me off. You deceived me so cruelly." The dream of openly becoming Mrs. Armstrong shattered completely. Adolf scoffed, not even bothering to placate her with empty words. He said righteously, "What did I deceive you about? Did I not give you money? Did I not allow your parents to enjoy privileges everywhere under my name? You've gotten everything you were entitled to. You should know your place and stop deluding yourself." He's openly and unapologetically a scumbag. Seeing Dana preparing to make a scene, he simply laid it all out. I never promised to divorce and marry you. It was just for fun. What's the point of always talking about commitment? All right, you should go now. Dana's sobbing suddenly stopped. She rushed over and grabbed his hand, her eyes brimming with tears as she pleaded, "Won't you even bother to lie to me?" When a man faces a woman utterly devoted to him, even if he isn't moved, he'll still feel a hint of pity, born from his own sense of superiority. Dana noticed Adolf's cold demeanor and suspected he resented her for making him lose face in front of his brothers. Quickly shifting tactics, she skillfully played the role of the fragile and innocent victim. I know I can't compare to Brenda, and I dare not compete with her, but at least my love for you is no less than hers. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so heartbroken over your words just now, but I've come to realize that as long as I can stay by your side, I'm willing to do anything. As she spoke, she clutched his sleeve, letting tears fall, and with a subtle lift of her arm, she deliberately revealed the bare skin concealed beneath her coat. If Adolf glanced down even once, he would immediately notice she was wearing nothing under her coat, a temptation more than enough to entice him. Yet Adolf's interest in her seemed to have vanished with those words. He didn't even bother to glance at her, merely furrowing his brows with impatience as he shook off her hand, coldly remarking, "You never loved me. It was always the money." He had known Dana's true nature all along. Indulging and pampering her had only been for his own amusement, a means to please himself. Whether she was Dana or Lee had never mattered from the start. Pity that Dana, far from understanding this, mistook it for his special favor. She truly believed she could replace Brenda and claim the title of Mrs. Armstrong. This unrealistic dream was only shattered today. Dana widened her eyes, staring blankly at Adolf, and said in disbelief, "How could you think of me like this? Clearly, I love you so much. I would do anything for you." She tried to prove this to Adolf, but couldn't even come up with a decent example. Adolf, having lost interest in her, turned his attitude around faster than flipping a page. Plummeting to rock bottom, he brushed off non-existent dust from his sleeves, smoothed out the wrinkles she had pulled into the fabric, and walked away without looking back. Dana knew that once he left, she would never have another chance to turn things around. Desperate, she threw herself at him, sobbing, "I truly love you. Please don't abandon me. I promise I'll never upset you again. And my parents, they'll leave here right away. They never had the right to stay in the Armstrong family in the first place." Adolf, annoyed by her clinging, turned back to glance at the brother who had earlier joked about wanting to try something new and suggested having some fun with Dana. "All right, I'm bored now. She's yours." These words sent Dana into a chilling despair, her face turning deathly pale as she asked, "How could you do this to me?" Adolf couldn't be bothered to ponder her words and simply replied with disinterest, "Enough. All you wanted was to latch onto a wealthy man. Right, there are plenty here. None of them will treat you poorly. Consider it me finding you a good next option." The brother had long noticed Dana's scandalous outfit beneath her coat and asked with a lecherous grin, "Mr. Adolf, are you serious?" "Of course I'm serious. If you like her, just take her to your place. From today onward, we have no relationship whatsoever. By the way, I need to pick up Brenda from the hospital. Even if you two decide to have fun in my office, keep it down and don't make too much noise." Adolf was clearly serious. If he had once found Dana somewhat intriguing, after she tore down that thin veil of pretense, she became no different from a discarded toy to him. Besides, apart from Brenda being his beloved, all other women were merely expendable, like clothes to be changed at will. The office door slowly closed behind him. No matter how Dana sobbed and poured out her grievances, he showed no intention of turning back. Click. The office was now divided into two completely different worlds, inside and out. Dana stared regretfully at the tightly shut door, her ears filled with the disrespectful laughter of Adolf's so-called friends. She realized her dream of becoming Mrs. Armstrong was completely shattered, and she was filled with regret. But to maintain her current lifestyle, she had no choice but to grit her teeth and endure it. If Adolf abandoned her, the playboys in the office would be her best option. Even though she knew she would gradually sink into depravity, she still chose to stay. Meanwhile, Adolf was driving to the hospital himself, eager to see Brenda. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder. The mere thought of seeing Brenda again filled him with excitement, almost like the early days of their romance. Not only had he prepared a whole set of excuses in advance, But he also made a special trip home to instruct Auntie Lucy and Uncle Bob to go rest, emphasizing they mustn't show up until their injuries healed, lest it disrupt his alone time with Brenda. Auntie Lucy and Uncle Bob's reactions seemed a bit too indifferent, unlike before, but he didn't care what they thought anyway and still bought a bouquet of flowers when passing by the florist. Anyway, Brenda loves him to the core, even if she's genuinely dissatisfied with him. This bouquet of flowers would be enough to win her over. Adolf just didn't expect that when he pushed open the hospital room door, the sight that greeted him would be strangers. He looked at the unfamiliar old man and the nurse preparing in for, then asked irritably, "Who are you?" The elderly man lay on the bed in a hospital gown, appearing to have been there for quite some time, his gaze toward him utterly vacant. The nurse still recognized him, but her first reaction was one of surprise as she asked, "Armstrong, what brings you here?" Adolf, seeing even her ask this, he questioned, "Why can't I come? I'm here to pick up my wife. Where is she?" 3 consecutive questions made even himself feel uneasy, until the nurse asked in an even more surprised tone, "Wasn't your wife already cremated? It's been almost a week since her funeral arrangements were completed. How could you, as her husband, not know anything about it?" Adolf was stunned on the spot. Brenda. Cremation. He couldn't associate her with that word at all and blurted out in protest. "Absolutely impossible. She must be angry because I haven't visited her in the hospital recently. Please, just tell me where she is. I'll apologize to her right away." The nurse looked at him with pity, as if he were speaking these words out of denial. She sighed helplessly and reminded him, "Mr. Armstrong, perhaps you could check the hospital records." Adolf, as the family member who originally helped Brenda with the hospitalization procedures, had the authority to do so. Suddenly enlightened, he didn't even care about the flowers in his arms anymore. Stumbling his way to the hospital's records management office, immediately identifying himself and demanding to check Brenda's records here. The hospital staff in charge of records noticed that Adolf's condition was very unusual. After verifying his identity, they showed him the records he requested. His hands trembled even as he turned the pages. After what felt like an eternity, Adolf asked hoarsely, "Is this true? Has Brenda already passed away?" Just associating her with the word death was unbearable for him to the point of making it hard to breathe, and his heart felt as if it were being tightly squeezed, causing him immense agony. The staff noticed him swaying slightly as he spoke, looking as if he might faint at any moment, and dared not provoke him further. They immediately proceeded to carefully explain the contents of the records to him. "Mr. Armstrong, please accept our condolences. Your wife, Brenda, passed away a week ago due to cardiac arrest caused by an overdose of sleeping pills. With the family's consent, she was transferred to the funeral home 3 days ago. The arrangements should already be completed by now, and it's time for you to come to terms with reality." The implication was that they suspected Adolf was unable to accept reality, which was why he had come to the hospital demanding to take his wife home. Little did they know, the truth was far more cruel than that. Adolf was completely unaware of Brenda's ordeal at the hospital. He nearly blacked out and collapsed on the spot. But to verify the truth, he steadied himself by holding onto the table and forced himself to stay upright. Concerned he might faint, the staff quickly suggested, "Mr. Armstrong, why don't you go upstairs and rest for a while?" "That won't be necessary. Just tell me which funeral home Brenda was sent to." Adolf, after regaining some composure, rushed out of the hospital at top speed and drove straight to the funeral home. He drove like the wind all the way, running through countless red lights, but none of that mattered anymore. Adolf stormed into the funeral home office, grabbing the manager by the collar and demanding, "Who gave you permission to cremate Brenda?" "I'm her husband. How dare you make such a decision without the family's consent?" At first, the manager thought he was there to cause trouble, but upon hearing the name, he suddenly understood and said, "You must be Miss Brenda's husband, Adolf Armstrong." "Right," Adolf replied through gritted teeth. "That's me." How he wished to hear the person in charge say they had made a mistake. But the other party merely responded with the same tone of surprise as the nurse at the hospital. "Didn't you already agree to the cremation request from the funeral home? We have a recording here." With that, he took out his phone and played a recording. The next second, Dana's voice came from the phone of the person in charge. "Brenda is dead. So be it. There's no need to inform us specifically. Adolf is taking a shower. I'm his fiancé. And as for Brenda's matter, he doesn't want to hear about it. And I don't care either. Don't you understand?" Her funeral arrangements have nothing to do with us. Even her family members are all dead. Just handle her remains the same way you usually deal with unclaimed bodies. Whether you bury or scatter the ashes after cremation, it doesn't matter. Do whatever you want." These words were spoken with such callousness and venom, a stark contrast to the fragile innocence she typically displayed in front of Adolf. Even though Adolf knew she only loved his money, the moment he learned the truth, he still found it hard to accept. He had always been the one to control situations and manipulate others. This was the first time he had miscalculated so badly as to be deceived by someone else. The person in charge's initial phone call was directly hung up by Dana. Fortunately, sensing something amiss, he had the presence of mind to press the record button. After the recording finished playing, he added, "Mr. Armstrong, we tried calling you afterward, but couldn't get through." Adolf slowly released his grip, his entire expression and reaction becoming quite remarkable. At this point, what was there left for him not to understand? Dana must have immediately blocked the person in charge after hanging up that call. The office was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The person in charge cautiously asked, "Mr. Armstrong, Miss Brenda's ashes are still placed in the storage. Since you're here, why not see to her funeral arrangements?" Adolf's eyes were red as if dripping blood. "Fine, I'll see for myself whether she's truly dead." As long as there remained even the slightest hope, he would never admit the fact of her death, because it simply couldn't be. Everything had been perfectly fine not long ago. He ran through every possibility in his mind, even considering a prank. Yet he alone refused to face the truth. Others might not know the specifics, but he was perfectly clear about the source of the sleeping pills. It was he who, in order to freely indulge with Dana, had bribed the nurse caring for Brenda to drug her in advance. Yet all he wanted was for her to sleep a little longer. He never intended to kill her. Adolf clenched his teeth and stubbornly held onto his stance until the person in charge brought over Brenda's death certificate and handed it to him with a sigh, saying, "Mr. Armstrong, please sign here. Whatever your relationship is now, it's truly tragic that Miss Brenda passed away so young." The death certificate bore a series of official seals, making any possibility of forgery unthinkable. No matter how much he resisted the truth, he had no choice but to accept the fact that Brenda was gone. What exactly happened next, Adolf could neither recall clearly nor wished to. All he knew was that when he left the funeral home holding the urn, the only emotion left was numbness. Brenda was dead, and with her, his hopes were dashed, as if the rest of his life had lost all meaning. Adolf dared not think about who was truly responsible for Brenda's death, so he simply blamed the nurse he had previously bribed. If not for her medication error, Brenda couldn't possibly have died. His dosage calculations could never be wrong. Treating others as murderers became the belief that kept him alive. Adolf returned to the hospital holding the urn and went straight to the leader's office, demanding the nurse by name. "Bring her to me immediately. She was the one who took care of my wife. Now that something has happened to my wife, she must be involved." The leader, quite experienced in handling medical disputes, immediately explained, "Mr. Armstrong, we fully understand your feelings. But the person you're looking for completed her resignation procedures and left the hospital 3 days ago. She left in a hurry, and no one knows where she is now. You actually let her go," he accused furiously. "Don't you know that the patient under her care just died from an overdose of sleeping pills? She's clearly the prime suspect in my wife's death." The argument in the office dragged on for a long time until Adolf, in a desperate move, called the police. Having deceived others for so long, he ended up deceiving himself as well, crying out in anguish over the phone, "I want to report a case. Someone has murdered my wife." The responding officers happened to be from the same precinct and arrived quickly. One of them had been at his house earlier that night and now asked in confusion, "Armstrong, isn't your wife perfectly fine at home? How could she have been murdered 3 days ago?" The question was blunt and crucial, instantly drawing the attention of everyone present, including the hospital administrators. Everyone wanted to know how Adolf could possibly have 2 wives. Adolf's mind gradually cooled down, and he finally realized how despicable his behavior of keeping a wife at home while having affairs outside was. His voice lowered as he replied, "The one at home isn't my wife, just a nanny, and she's already been fired." "I see." The police officer nodded thoughtfully. "Now we need to clarify one thing. Have you divorced your wife in the hospital?" He and his colleagues had witnessed Dana's father Dana's mother's tantrums before and felt nothing but utter contempt for Adolf's behavior. Adolf also looked visibly uncomfortable. his face alternating between shades of green and white. He awkwardly touched the tip of his nose and said, "This is my private matter and has nothing to do with the case. I called you here to report a crime, to help me find the real culprit who injected my wife with sleeping pills in the surveillance footage." At this moment, he was completely immersed in the illusion of being a good husband, unable to extricate himself. Even when the police called the next morning to summon him to the station, he still clung to the idea of avenging Brenda as his driving force. Until the nurse appeared before him, Adolf took one look at the murderer and lunged without hesitation, grabbing the nurse by the throat, fully intending to kill her with his own hands as retribution for Brenda. Fortunately, the police were prepared and intervened the moment he attacked. The nurse had anticipated this reaction and, refusing to back down, pointed at him and countered, "Officers, I'm here both to surrender and to report a crime. I want to accuse this man of murdering his wife. I did inject Brenda with sleeping pills, but the dosage was provided by him. He's the real killer. If I had known Brenda's physical condition was so poor that she couldn't withstand injectable sedatives at all, I would never have administered the medication. Even if I needed money, I wouldn't risk my job." As she spoke, she confidently produced Adolf's bank card and the carefully preserved surveillance footage. These two pieces of evidence were enough to prove the truth of her claims. The police immediately accepted the evidence she provided and began investigating her financial transactions and the authenticity of the surveillance footage. Adolf never expected that one day he would be outmaneuvered by the very nurse he had bribed. Finally, unable to contain his inner collapse, his body swayed and he fell to the ground, not even sparing the urn he held in his arms. The pale-colored ashes scattered instantly across the ground, mingling with the cheap, brittle porcelain shards, creating an indescribably desolate scene. Adolf had already lost Brenda once. He absolutely couldn't fail to protect the last remnants she left behind. He frantically bent down to gather them, trying to hold on to her handful by handful. But a sharp-eyed police officer nearby noticed something amiss. "Wait a moment." The officer quickly stepped forward, stopping Adolf while asking in confusion, "How old was your wife? Did she have any dental issues when she was alive?" Adolf clutched a handful of ashes that slipped through his fingers, his gaze filled with hostility as he retorted, "What are you implying?" The officer could only point to the ashes hidden among the shattered porcelain and say, "The incinerator's heat wasn't enough to completely burn the bones. This tooth is the best evidence. I used to be a detective, so I'm familiar with human tissue. This tooth couldn't belong to a young person. It doesn't match your wife's age." At these words, Adolf nearly collapsed on the spot. A glimmer of hope surged from the depths of his heart as he practically threw himself onto the porcelain shards to pick up the tooth, asking, "Then how old should the person it belongs to be?" The officer pondered for a moment but ultimately shook his head. "It's hard to say. The tooth was burned in the incinerator and is severely damaged. We can only vaguely tell it belonged to an elderly person. As for the exact age, that would require further examination." These words were essentially meaningless, but for Adolf, they were enough. Instantly reinvigorated, he asked the police for a new urn. After swiftly gathering the scattered ashes from the floor, he hurriedly stood up, leaving everyone behind as he rushed straight to the funeral home. The police and the nurse who had come to surrender exchanged bewildered glances. None of them understood exactly what had happened. But one thing was certain, Adolf's expression as he left was not that of a man who had given up hope. About half an hour later, Adolf reappeared at the funeral home. He stopped the director, who had been trying to avoid him, and got straight to the point. "I remember Brenda's grandmother was brought here after she passed away. Has she been cremated yet?" The curator never expected him to ask such a question and replied blankly, "Why do you ask that?" Adolf snapped sharply, "You don't need to know why. Just tell me where her grandmother's remains are. That's all I need. I'll handle the rest." "She was cremated long ago, but the ashes were never claimed." The curator once again pointed in the direction of the storage cabinets. Before he could finish speaking, Adolf had already let go without hesitation and rushed straight toward the storage cabinets. With trembling hands, he took out Grandma Brenda's urn, taking several deep breaths before mustering the courage to open it. The urn was empty, revealing nothing but air. Adolf's expression shifted dramatically, nearly bringing him to tears of joy as he muttered incessantly, "I knew Brenda couldn't have just died. She's just angry with me and hiding. That's all. Yes, it must be." In a flash of insight, he pieced together the entire sequence of events. Brenda's urn contained her grandmother's ashes, which was enough proof that she hadn't died at all. Instead, She had pulled off a classic disappearing act. As for her motive, it was glaringly obvious. She wanted to leave him. Adolf alternated between laughter and tears, finally realizing belatedly that she had known all along about the things he thought he'd kept hidden from her. Meanwhile, in the southern hemisphere, Australia was approaching noon, and Brenda was teaching a class at her newly appointed school. Now she has given herself a new name, Emma, with even her passport and past identity completely renewed. No one here knows who she used to be, much less would anyone call her Mrs. Armstrong. To everyone, she is simply Teacher Emma. The children at school adore this beautiful and gentle new teacher. Under her patient and inspiring guidance, even those uninterested in painting can sit at their desks and sketch a few strokes, until the school bell rings. Brenda, seeing the children still engrossed in their drawings, she clapped her hands to get their attention. All right, kids, it's almost lunchtime. Your parents are already waiting outside to pick you up. Let's pack up your things and get ready to finish class. Okay. The children were reluctant to stop drawing, but upon hearing that class was over, they began packing up their things one after another. A quick and observant child glanced out the window and asked with a grin, "Teacher Emma, your boyfriend is here to pick you up too." The other children, who had been packing up, all turned to look in unison upon hearing this, then burst into a chorus of teasing cheers. "Teacher Emma, your boyfriend is so handsome. How did you two meet? Can you invite me to your wedding?" "Teacher, I want to be a flower girl." Most children nowadays mature early. Even elementary school students already understand the concept of boyfriends and girlfriends. The barrage of questions caught Brenda completely off guard, and she could only try to maintain order by saying, all right. Questions unrelated to class can be discussed next time." As she spoke, she raised her eyes to the window, just meeting the gaze of Dr. Boris, who had been waiting for a long time. Their eyes locked, and in each other's gaze, they saw their own reflections. Dr. Boris flushed slightly, first rubbing the tip of his nose in embarrassment, then voluntarily retreated to a spot where the children couldn't see him. Brenda didn't linger her gaze on him either. She went about her business as usual, and only after sending all the children back to their families did she take the initiative to approach the corridor where he stood and ask, "Why are you here again? Shouldn't a doctor's work be very busy?" As she spoke, she gave him a gentle smile that made his heart flutter, and he couldn't help but smile back, saying softly, "I came to find you. You haven't been here long, so I thought I should see things through to the end." "Right." As he spoke, he naturally reached out to take the bag she was carrying, which was heavy with art supplies. Brenda subtly hid her hand behind her back while composing her expression, saying earnestly, "Dr. Boris, I truly appreciate your kindness and all the help you've given me. But after a failed marriage, I don't want to repeat the same mistakes." "But what if it's not a mistake, but a path you once had the chance to take?" Dr. Boris wasn't surprised she had seen through his feelings. He admitted frankly, "The truth is, I've liked you for a long time." Brenda looked at him in surprise. Dr. Boris explained with a bitter smile, "It seems I hid it too well, but there was no other way. By the time I felt worthy to confess my feelings to you, you were already married. The only option left was to bury my emotions deep in my heart." He took a deep breath and, sensing Brenda's not entirely disapproving attitude, asked, "I really don't want to miss you again, so could you give me a chance? Just let me stay by your side. I don't need any formal commitment." In the face of true feelings, so-called formalities are nothing but a worthless piece of paper. Brenda didn't speak, just silently handed the bag to Dr. Boris, who eagerly took it and fulfilled his promise in the days that followed. Although both were usually busy with work, Dr. Boris always found time to wait for her at school after class, gradually solidifying his identity as Brenda's boyfriend in others' eyes. Even the parents who often picked up their children knew they were a loving couple, and Brenda showed no signs of disapproval. Dr. Boris knew this was Brenda giving him a chance. Far from slacking off, he seized the opportunity, doing everything in his power to make her happy. Brenda wasn't used to Australian cuisine, so he leveraged his strengths, insisting on cooking for her every night and even preparing her lunch for school the next day, which only needed a quick microwave heat-up. She loved outdoor activities, so he accompanied her to watch fireworks, go diving. Day by day passed, and although the two had yet to break through that final layer of window paper, the time they spent together grew longer and longer. Even on weekday evenings, they would still go for walks by the seaside together. That evening, As they were strolling and chatting along the seaside promenade, an uninvited guest suddenly rushed out and shattered the peaceful atmosphere. Dr. Boris never expected someone to suddenly rush up from behind and punch him. His first thought was that he was facing a medical dispute, but when he saw the furious expression and haggard face of the other person, he immediately shielded Brenda behind him. "What do you want?" He ignored the pain from the blow to his cheek and demanded through gritted teeth. Adolf searched for Brenda for a long time, during which even his normal work was completely forgotten. He even went so far as to spend a fortune hiring a private detective with international capabilities to confirm her whereabouts. Finally tracking her down here after being deceived many times, he came to give her a surprise and take her back with him. But little did he expect that this meeting would be nothing but a shock without any joy. Brenda looked at him with even less warmth than a stranger, her tone icy cold. She held on to Dr. Boris, who stood protectively in front of her, and warned Adolf, "Apologize to him right now, or I'll call the police." Adolf said with trembling voice and reddened eyes, "Call the police? After all the deep affection we once shared, you'd actually call the police?" "Yes, with such deep affection in the past. Didn't you still cheat habitually, even to the point of drugging her just so you could fool around without any worries? Forgive my bluntness, but a man like you doesn't deserve her at all. You shouldn't even be in her presence." Dr. Boris had always held Adolf in utter contempt for his actions. Seeing him dare to appear before him now, he finally had the chance to vent his disdain. Adolf, having his dirty laundry aired in front of Brenda, flew into a humiliated rage on the spot, clenching his fist and swinging at him. This time, Dr. Boris was prepared and naturally wouldn't suffer the disadvantage of being caught off guard. He ducked to avoid Adolf's punch, then retaliated by throwing a punch of his own at Adolf's face. The two fought fiercely, only separating when Brenda actually called the police. The result was both of them ending up in the hospital, with their wards right next to each other. During this period, Brenda would unfailingly visit Dr. Boris every day after work. She cooked porridge for him, called nurses to change his dressings, and even showed genuine concern upon learning he was at risk of a mild concussion. In contrast, Adolf received utterly terrible treatment. He had sprained his ankle during the fight, though it couldn't compare in severity to a concussion. Yet the impact on his daily life was significant enough that even trying to steal another glance at Brenda required him to struggle and lean against the wall for support. "Brenda, can we talk?" He refused to enter Dr. Boris's room, standing by the door and waiting for her for a long time. Seeing that she had no intention of visiting him, he couldn't help but ask. Brenda didn't even turn her head. Her scolding attitude toward Dr. Boris for getting into a fight was still vivid, but her treatment of Adolf was much colder, as if the many years they had spent together had become so unbearable that she couldn't bear to look back, unwilling to even think about it. "There's nothing for us to talk about." Her heart was as unyielding as stone, impossible to soften with a few costless words, and even less likely to leap back into the cage she had barely escaped. But Adolf was far from giving up. He pleaded, "Then let me speak, and you listen. Then decide whether to forgive me or not." "All right, I've already sent Dana away. Don't worry. Anything or anyone you dislike, I won't let them appear before you. You've gone too far." Dr. Boris wanted to rise and drive Adolf away, but Brenda gently tugged his sleeve, maintaining her unyielding posture as she whispered, "To be precise, you should demand they stop harassing us. That would be best for everyone." This suggestion wasn't just good. It was like having the Grim Reaper himself working at the hospital. Adolf felt this was no different from being flayed alive. Seeing Brenda firm in her resolve, as if she had no intention of turning back, he resorted to begging for forgiveness daily to stay on her radar. Once Dr. Boris was discharged, he could leave too, and without another word, he put this plan into action. Brenda now lived in a detached house with its own yard. Every morning, she used to draw the curtains and immediately bask in the warm sunlight. But since Adolf began his peculiar form of repentance, she abandoned this habit, because Adolf was determined to demonstrate his remorse and anguish, going so far as to kneel on the sidewalk outside her house every morning at dawn. At first, it always drew curious onlookers, but eventually, people grew accustomed to it, and his presence there became as inconspicuous as a tree. It wasn't until that afternoon when a torrential downpour arrived that the local police received reports and came to persuade him to leave. Seeing that Adolf refused to leave no matter what they said, the officers didn't resort to force immediately. Instead, They waited until he became completely unresponsive before promptly taking him away on charges of disturbing the peace. Brenda gave a helpless smile to Dr. Boris beside her, but the expression was clearly more painful than a cry, making his heart ache. He immediately suggested, "How about we leave Australia?" These words struck Brenda right in the heart. Her eyes lit up, and she asked excitedly, "Have you thought of where to go?" Dr. Boris loved seeing her smile. He teased her by saying, "I've already decided, but I can't tell you just yet. It's a place Adolf would never possibly find. If I say it out loud now, what if he somehow tracks us down?" "All right, we'll do as you say." Brenda had grown much bolder in her efforts to break free from the entanglement, waiting for Adolf to come out of the police station. Brenda and Dr. Boris had already vanished without a trace, even after searching every possible place, hospitals, schools, and elsewhere. He couldn't find the slightest clue of their whereabouts. Finally, the landlord, exasperated by his persistence, snapped, "Don't you know they left everything behind when they moved out just to avoid trouble? Whatever grudge you hold against them, enough is enough. Stop harassing them. I just want my wife back." Adolf watched helplessly as the door slammed shut in his face. For a moment, he wondered if he really should let go, but the thought of Brenda being with Dr. Boris was unbearable. In the following days, he spared no effort in searching for Brenda, even refusing to answer calls from back home, until his visa was about to expire and he had no choice but to return. Yet in just a few short months, everything had changed beyond recognition. Aunt Lucy and Uncle Bob had already resigned. Now the entire Armstrong household was thrown into chaos by Dana's father, Dana's mother. They couldn't care less about where Dana had gone, only that they could indulge in the mansion without restraint and boss around the few servants still willing to work. Adolf immediately noticed the soiled carpet and disheveled sofa upon entering. Finding them an eyesore, he ordered the remaining servant, "Throw out these two and everything they've touched." The servants were oppressed by Dana's father and mother to the point of misery, so they complied without hesitation. Dana returned to the Armstrong household covered in injuries and witnessed this scene. She immediately understood everything and rushed to him in tears, pleading, "Even a day as husband and wife brings 100 days of kindness. I've lost everything now. Why must you be so ruthless? Your so-called brothers have already abandoned me." She had hoped to profit from them, but little did she expect that once they learned of the Armstrong family's recent troubles, they would discard her like trash. Now, she could only pin her hopes on the saying, "A starved camel is still bigger than a horse." Adolf cast a cold glance at her and said, "If you hadn't mentioned it, I might have forgotten. It was you who concealed Brenda's whereabouts, wasn't it? In that case, I suppose I should leave your family away to survive. I'll simply send you all to Southeast Asia to fend for yourselves." By the time he finished dealing with this family of three, the once meticulously maintained home by Brenda had lost all traces of its former self. Adolf stubbornly attempted to restore the house to its original state, immediately calling his assistant to issue orders. It wasn't until this moment that he learned, while he was losing his mind abroad, the Armstrong family had undergone drastic changes. Investors withdrew, and the board had effectively sidelined him, out of respect for their past collaboration. The assistant answered his call, but after explaining the situation, they paid him no further attention, leaving him alone in the empty, ransacked-like room, where he alternated between laughter and tears, descending into madness. On a remote, uninhabited island somewhere at this moment, Brenda was leisurely sunbathing. Dr. Boris placed the chilled drinks and fruits beside her before lying down on the beach chair next to her, speaking softly, "This place isn't bad, is it? Except for the daily supply ship. It's almost completely cut off from the world. A perfect spot for peace of mind." Brenda kept her eyes closed, as if already asleep. Yet, as the sea breeze brushed past her, the corners of her lips slowly curled into a faint smile. Experiencing an unprecedented sense of tranquility by the sea, her life was about to start anew from here. The end.